Welcome to review lesson 2 for grade 9 math. We're going to be working with operations with fractions. Starts off with a bit of a definition, equivalent fractions. So you need to know what equivalent fractions are. Equivalent fractions are fractions that have different blank but the same blank. So just a quick review first. If we have that fraction 1 over 2, the special word we give for the top of a fraction is the numerator, and this bottom we call it the denominator. So equivalent fractions are fractions that have different denominators, but they have the same value. So for example, 1/2 and 5/10 are equivalent fractions. So if I asked you to find 3 fractions equivalent to the fraction 6 over 8. So think of one right now. Chances are you probably thought, hey, I can simplify it to 3 over 4. That's a pretty common one. And once you have 3 over 4, you could times the top and the bottom by the same number. And so you can multiply the top and bottom by like 3. So it could be 9 over 12. But you could also do, so that one I got by taking the top and the bottom and multiplying them by 3. Because the general rule of thumb is whatever you do to the top, you got to do to the bottom. One that I find really enjoyable to do is just take the top and the bottom and multiply them by 10 or like by 100. So another one that I might do might be 600 over 800. But as long as they all simplify to the same fraction or they convert to the same decimal value, they're equivalent fractions. We need to know about equivalent fractions because we're going to be doing some stuff, the addition and subtraction, where we need to get a common denominator first. We need that only for adding and subtracting. We're going to start with multiplying and dividing because, frankly, I think that's easier and we don't need the common denominator quite yet. So when we are multiplying fractions, the rule is it's going to be top times top, or numerator times numerator, over the bottom times the bottom. So in our first question, 3 over 7 times, this dot means multiply. 3 over 7 times 3 over 2, we're going to do top times top, so 3 over 3, which is 9, and the bottom is going to be 7 times 2, which is 14, and that's it. I think it's pretty straightforward. Dividing fractions, I find the way this question is written really yucky, to be honest. But it's only because this line here means dividing. So I could rewrite this as 1 over 10 divided by 2 over 4. And the reminder for dividing is you flip the second and you multiply. So flip the second fraction and multiply. Another fancier way of saying this would be to dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And that, let me write that down and then I'll talk some more. Multiplying by the reciprocal. And reciprocal is just a fancy word for saying the flip. So that flip and that reciprocal, they're totally related. So whichever way you want to remember it, we're going to leave the first fraction the same, and then I'm going to flip the second one. It was 2 over 4. I'm going to change it to 4 over 2, and I'm going to change it into a timesing. So when we do this, now we do top times top, 1 times 4, which is 4, 10 times 2, which is 20. And we're going to see if we can simplify. In this case, we can. We can divide top and bottom both by 4, and I get 1 over 5. All right, question 3. adding and subtracting. And there's this little box over here. This box is really important. So you must have a common denominator. If we're adding or subtracting, we must have a common denominator. So the common denominator, or the common denom, I used to call it. So the common denominator here, denom equals, it's going to be 7 times 2, so it's going to be 14. So to get a denominator of 14 here, I would do, to get 7 to 14, I'd have to times it by 2. And whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I would get up top 6, on the bottom 14. For the second one, to get 2 up to 14, times it by 7. Whatever do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 3 times 7, which is 21 over 14. And once you have a common denominator, now we're only going to add the numerators. So we're only going to add the tops. So that'd be 6 plus 21 over 14, which gives 27 over 14. And we would see if we can simplify it. 7 goes into both, into 14, but not into 27. Same with 2. So that's it. It's simple. It's improper, but it's already simplified. For subtracting fractions, we need a common denominator. So in this case, the denom equals, we want the lowest number that both 10 and 4 go into. So 20. So to get to 20, I'm going to have to times this by 2. I'm going to have to times this one by 5. And so for the first one, we get 1 times 2 is, sorry, the page is all moving around, 2. 10 times 2 is 20, minus 2 times 5 is 10. 4 times 5 is 20. Now that we have the common denominator, we can subtract the numerators. So we put them over our common denominator, and now we subtract. 2 divided by 10 is minus 8 over 20, and this can be simplified. We can divide both the top and the bottom by 4, and when we're done that, we get minus 2 over 5. So that's multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting. And if you find this tricky, please be brave and reach out for some extra practice on this, because it's going to be really important that you can do these types of things. And I'm doing all of this without a calculator. You should be able to do that too. Next page asks the question, what's the difference between these 3 different things that have been written here? So I don't like these ways they're written. I think I mentioned that before. Whenever we have this big divide by thing, I'm going to rewrite it so they're beside each other. So this would be the same as 1 divided by 2/3. This would be the same as 1/2 divided by 3. And this would be the same as 1/2 divided by 3 over 4. And they want to know what the difference is. So let's work them all out and see what's actually happening. When we're dealing with fractions and we've got whole numbers, remember this is here a whole number. It really can be written as a fraction over a ghosty 1. So that 1 is really 1 over 1, and that 3 is really a 3 over 1. All the rest are fractions. We learned, or you remember, I hope, that dividing is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is the same as 1 over 1 times, flip it, I would get 3 over 2. Top times top gives me 3. Bottom times bottom gives me 2. We're going to stop. So here, I'm going to keep my first fraction, flip the second, and then top times top gives me 1. Bottom times bottom gives me 6. So those are very different. This last one, first fraction's a half. Dividing by 3/4 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 4/3. And then top times top gives me 4, bottom times bottom gives me 6. And if I were to simplify it, it would give me 2/3. So these are all very different. And so the trick here is, and we'll write down this trick. Remember to write whole numbers as fractions over 1. The next one says, which fractions represent the same thing and why? So instead of the word thing, I might use the word value. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to do the division. And I know we said no calculator, but that was for the previous stuff, order of operations. For this one, if we were to use a calculator and calculate -5 divided by 4, we'd get -1.25. And if I do 5 divided by -4, that's the same. It's -1.25. And then this question is saying, I've got a negative sign out front, so it's going to stay out front, negative. And 5 divided by 4 is 1.25. Here I've got -5 divided by -4, so that's going to give me positive 1.25. So this was all to remind you that if there is one division symbol, one negative symbol in the division, then your final answer is negative. And in general, we tend not to write the negative symbol like this one, not in the denominator. That's not really proper formatting, but they all work out to be the same thing. Okay, so we're going to bump that negative sign either out front or up top. And all this table is just a summary of how to do multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It's just typed out much tidier than my handwriting. So we're going to practice this now, and it's going to be a combo of BEDMAS and fractions all at once. I'm going to try and do it without a calculator. So in this question, we have brackets. So I'm going to do the brackets first. So I'm going to leave the 2/3 out front times. In the bracket, it's addition. So I'm going to need a common denominator. 4 times 9 is 36. So that's going to be my common denominator. I multiplied the top and the bottom by 9 here. 6 times 9 is 54. Here I multiplied by 4, so that's 20. So that's 2/3 times. They're both over 36. 54 plus 20 is 74. I'm going to simplify before I multiply. I can see that 74 and 36 are both divisible by 2, maybe by more, but I'm just going to simplify first. And I am using a calculator, full disclosure. So I leave the 2/3 out front. I get 37, and 36 divided by 2 is, is 18. And now we do top times top. So 2 times 37 is 2 times 37 is, it's 74. Duh. And then 3 times 18 is 54. And these are both even, so I can divide them again, both by 2. Oh, I could have canceled. I could have canceled right here and divided both of those by 2. That would have made my life easier. And I'll get 37 over, and then 54 divided by 2 is 27. And that's going to be our final answer. Question 2, another set of brackets. So we're going to do the brackets first. leave the minus 3/4 out front, times, it's going to be 9 times, one of those moments. So I'm just, because I can't see anything else, I'm just going to times this by 6, this by 6, this times 9, this by 9. I have memories of it being something smaller, but I can't think of what it is right now. So 8 times 6 is 48. So minus 48 over 54 plus 9 over 54. So the minus 3/4 stays out front. Minus 48 plus 9 gives me minus 39 over 54. And 54 is divisible by 3. So with the multiplying here, I'm going to do some canceling. And that's where you have something up top, like this minus 3 and a 54. I can see I can divide them both by minus 3. So I would get minus 1 over 4 times minus 39 over 54 divided by 3 is 18. So when we do this, I get positive 39 over 18 times 4 is 72. I think these are still both divisible by 3. So divide by 3, and I get 13 over 24, and then that's it. That is simplified. Question 3. How many questions do we have to do? 4 more. 5, 6 more. Okay. Another set of brackets. So what's different here that you might not remember, when you have a number squished up beside a bracket, so a num squished against bracket, I hope you remember that it means that you have to multiply. So that number squished against that bracket means it's going to be minus 3 over minus 5. First off, minus minus turns into a positive, so it's going to be 3/5 times whatever comes out of here. So I did minus minus, that's like it turned into a positive. I've got another minus minus here, so again it turns into a positive. So times 4 over 6 plus 6 over 8. Before I find a common denominator, I'm just going to simplify those. So that's the same as 2/3 plus 3/4. That makes our common denominator 12. That's a lot nicer. So 3/5 times, I get 8 over 12 plus 9 over 12. 8 plus 9 is 17 over 12. So I'm going to have 3/5 times 17 over 12. But I see that I can cancel, so I will. I can cancel with the 3 and the 12, divided by 3, divided by 3. And I'm left with 1 and 4. So if I'm dealing with up top, I get 1 times 17 over 5 times 4, which is 17 over 20. Question 4. Okay, I've got to figure out what this is. And then there's a plus sign. And then what this is. And then another plus sign. And then what this is. So I have 3 terms here. And remember, I'm going to write all these whole numbers as fractions with a denominator of 1 or over a ghosty 1. So top times top, bottom times bottom, I get minus 2 over 4, which simplifies to minus a half, plus top times top with a minus sign there, so minus 3 over 6, which is the same as plus a minus half, plus Top times top is a minus 5 over 1 times 10 is a 10. So that's going to give me also a minus a 1/2. So I've got minus a half plus minus a half minus another half. So that's the same as common denominator of minus 1 minus 1 minus 1 all over 2, or minus 3 halves. That's question 4. Question 5. Oh, brackets and terms and all kinds of stuff. First thing we're going to do is deal with this. So out front, we've got the minus a half, so I'm going to leave that, times minus 2/3 times. I'm going to simplify this to be 2/3. And just explain what I did there. I'm going to divide that by 3. So I get 2, and divide by 3, and I get 3. So 2/3 minus 5/8. So I'll write that as 2/3 minus 5/8 plus the 3/8 at the end. Okay. So minus a half times minus 2/3 times. Now I'm going to do common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be 24. So times 8 times 8 times 3 times 3. So I'm going to get in the bracket 16 minus 15 all over Why do I feel like I made a boo-boo somewhere? I don't know. 16 minus 15 all over 24. No, I think that's right. Plus 3/8. So I get minus a half times minus 2/3 times 1 over 24 plus 3/8. I'm going to deal with all these minuses all together. I notice that I can do a cancel. Cancel something on the top with something on the bottom. So I've got a 2 up top and a 2 down below. So they're both going to cancel to 1 if I do divided by 2, divided by 2. So I'm left with up top minus 1 times minus 1 times 1 over 1 times 3 times 24 plus 3/8. So that gives me minus times minus is a plus. So plus 1 times 1 times 1 is 1 over, and 3 times 24 is 72. So I have 1 over 72 plus 3 over 8. But now I need a common denominator. And my pen won't change. But the common denominator is going to be 72. So it's going to be 1 over 72. I'm going to have to multiply the bottom times 9 and the top times 9. So that's going to be 27 over 72, which gives me a final answer of 28 over 72, which is 14 over 36, which is 7 over 18. And can I change my pen colors yet? Nope. I'm not sure what's happened. Looks like I'm down to just one color for the last. Oh, and I can't. Okay. It's not letting me move around the screen. Let's try this again, and maybe it'll work. There we go. Okay. Question 6. We got brackets inside brackets inside brackets. The first thing I'm going to figure out is this bracket. I meant to use a highlighter. This bracket. Once I have that, then I will do the blue bracket, and then I will times it by the 2 and subtract the minus 3/8. So I'm also going to simplify the fractions the first time through. So 2 over 4 is the same as 1/2 minus 8 over 4 is the same as 2 over 1 times. I'm going to need 72 again. So times 9 times 9 times 8 times 8. I get minus 27 up top, 72 down low. 5 times 8 is 40, and 72. Close off the brackets with a minus 3/8. So I'm still doing first this purple. 1/2 out front, minus 2 over 1, times. I've got both minuses up top. Minus 27 minus 40 is going to give me minus 67 over 72. And then that whole thing is minus 3/8. Timesing, I don't need a common denominator. And in fact, because it's timesing, I can cancel. And I'm going to cancel. I have a 2 and a 72. So I'm going to divide by 2, get 1. Divide by 2, get 36. So out front, my 1/2. In the square bracket, up top, I've got minus 1 times minus 67. And down low, I've got 1 times 36. You don't have to write that step. I'm just writing it so I keep track. So I have 1/2. Up top, I get positive 67 over 36. Top times top. I'm going to just not write that positive because it might make me think that I have to add them. I don't. I'm timesing. So up top is 1 times 67, which is 67. On the bottom is 2 times 36, which is 72. And this whole thing is minus 3/8. Need a common denominator. The common denominator here is 72. So, here. Times 9 times 9. Do I have more room? A little bit. So 67 over 72 minus 3 times 9 is 27 over 72. So that's 67 minus 27 over 72. So 67 minus 27 is 40 over 72. Can chop it in half. So 20 over 36 can chop it in half again. So 10 over 18 can go one more time. So that's 5 over 9. That whole big mess turns into 5 over 9. And just a reminder that each time I divide it by 2, then I divide it by 2 again, and then divide it by 2. Because whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. All right, 2 to go. Question 7. I'm going to have the top, and then I'm going to have the bottom. So here's my top, and then here's my bottom, and then it's going to be the top divided by the bottom. So I'm going to figure out the top on its own first, and then I'm going to figure out the bottom, and then I'm going to do top. Down here somewhere, I will do top divided by bottom. I should use red for that. Top divided by bottom, and we'll figure out what that is later. Okay, for the top, I got 1/4 plus 1/8 minus 1/16. So common denominator is going to be 16. Denom equals 16. So times 4 times 4 times 2 times 2. So for this one, I get 4 over 16 plus 2 over 16 minus 1 over 16. 6 over 16 minus 1 is 5 over 16. So I get that the top equals 5 over 16. Now let's figure out what that bottom equals. So the bottom is 1/2 plus 1/3. Common denominator is going to be 6. So I do times 3 times 3 times 2 times 2. So I get 3 over 6 plus 2 over 6. So that's 5 over 6. So that's for the bottom. And I'm going to divide by 5 over 6. Remember, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by a reciprocal. So it's going to be 5 over 16. And I'm going to switch it to times by the reciprocal or the flip. So it's going to be 6 over 5. I can see some canceling that I can do. I'm going to cancel 5 into 5. That goes once. I'm also going to cancel these both by 2. So to divide by 2, I get a 3. Divide by 2, I get an 8. So up top I get 1 times 3, and the bottom I get 8 times 1, so I get that the final answer is 1/3. And I don't think that's the answer at the bottom of the page. So, you know what? Because I can't, I must be tired. Top is 3. 1 times 3. Bottom is 8. So sorry about that. And we get 3/8. Last question. Again, I'm going to do this thing where I split it into the top and the bottom. So there's my top. Let's figure out what the top is first. So the top is 1/10 plus 5/24. There might be something smaller, but I'm just going to do that times 24 and that one times 10. So I get 24 over 240 plus 50 over 240. That gives me 74 over 240. And I can simplify that. I can divide top and bottom by 2. So I get 36 over 120. No, not 36. 74 divided by 2 is 37. 37 over 120. And then that can't be simplified because 37 is prime. The bottom equals 1 over 240 plus 1 over 360 minus 7 over 120. So this is yucky because I need to find the common denominator of 240, 360, and 120. But I'm going to think about it as if I wanted to find the common denominator of the common, I'm going to draw a line, the common denom of 24, 36, and 12. Right? The smallest number that they can all divide into. And I find that way easier. And when I look at those, I can see that it would be 72. So then if it's the common denominator of 240, 360, and 120, then I'm looking, the common denominator is going to be 720. So for a common denominator of 720, this one's going to be times 3, that one's going to be times 2, and that one's going to be times 6. So times 3, times 2, and times 6. So I get 3 over 720 plus 2 over 720 minus 42 over 720. So 3 plus 2 minus 42 over 720 is 37 over, minus 3 plus 2 minus 42 is minus 37 over 720. And I've written so big and taken up so much space. I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to go to purple. So top divided by bottom is going to equal, the top was 37 over 120, 37 over 120. That's a terrible 120. 120 divided by negative 37 over 720. Dividing is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. That was a 0. So multiply, the reciprocal is the flip. So 720 over minus 37. I see a cancel, which is nice. 37 and 37 go away and leave me with minus 1 and 1. 120 divides into 720. We just did that. That was 6 times. So 1 and 6. So up top, I get 1 times 6. Down low, I get 1 times minus 1. So that's the same as 6 over minus 1, which is the same as minus 6, which happens to be the answer that we can see right here. So I got it right, and I feel very good. And that's it for combining order of operations with fractions. Again, if you need any help, any support with any of this, make sure you reach out to me. You know that I'm here to help. Thanks.